The single dad returned a CEO's wallet with $40,000 inside, but what she discovered after following him would force her to question everything she believed about honesty, power, and love. Just after midnight, Caleb Turner stood beneath the crystal lights of a luxury Chicago hotel, rain dripping from his worn jacket as security guards closed in around him. On the marble counter lay the wallet he had found in the parking garage. Every dollar was still inside. His own pocket held barely enough to buy medicine for his sick daughter. He could have changed his life in one moment. Instead, he chose to return what was not his. This story is more than a tale about money. It is about dignity, quiet sacrifice, and the kind of love that appears when two guarded hearts least expect it. Stay until the end. Like the video and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Before Caleb Turner stood beneath those crystal lights with $40,000 resting between him and a room full of suspicion. His day had begun in a kitchen barely warm enough to keep the frost from gathering on the inside of the windows. At 5:47 that morning, the furnace coughed twice and went silent. Caleb opened his eyes before the apartment had fully settled into the cold. For several seconds, he remained on the narrow couch where he had fallen asleep in his clothes, listening. The refrigerator hummed. A pipe knocked somewhere inside the wall. From the bedroom came the faint, uneven whistle of his daughter breathing. He was on his feet immediately. The apartment was small enough that he reached Rosie's door in 4 steps. She was asleep beneath 2 blankets, her dark hair spread across the pillow, one hand curled around a stuffed fox whose fur had been rubbed thin at the ears. Caleb stood beside the bed and counted her breaths. 1, 2, a pause that lasted just long enough to tighten his chest. 3. Rosie opened one eye. You are doing the counting thing again. Caleb softened his face. I was checking whether you stole my blanket. You do not have a purple blanket. That is exactly what a blanket thief would say. She smiled, but the smile turned into a dry cough. Caleb sat beside her and reached for the rescue inhaler on the nightstand. Rosie pushed herself upright. I am okay. I know. You only use that voice when I am not okay. What voice? The calm one. Caleb shook the inhaler, placed it in her hand, and watched her take the medication. He waited until her breathing loosened before standing. I am going to fix the furnace. Again, it has developed a need for attention. Maybe it is lonely. Then it picked an expensive way to express itself. He tucked the blankets around her shoulders and walked into the kitchen. The furnace panel was inside a closet beside the refrigerator. Caleb removed the cover with a screwdriver, then leaned close as the weak light above him flickered. The ignition sensor was coated with soot. He cleaned it with the edge of an old cloth, adjusted a loose wire, and pressed the reset switch. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. The furnace clicked, groaned, and finally came to life. Warm air moved through the vent near the floor. Caleb closed his eyes for 1 second. Behind him, Rosie shuffled into the kitchen wearing yellow socks and one of his old college sweatshirts. The sleeves hung past her hands. You fixed it. For now. That is what you said yesterday. And yesterday, I was right. Rosie climbed onto a chair at the small kitchen table. Pieces of construction paper were spread across it along with a glue stick, child-safe scissors, and several folded stars. 4 envelopes sat near her elbow. Rent, medicine, school lunch, Christmas. Each word was written in Caleb's careful block letters. Rosie lifted the Christmas envelope and shook it beside her ear. No coins moved inside. She looked toward the tiny tree in the corner. It was made from 3 stacks of books covered in green paper, with 1 strand of silver ribbon wrapped around the middle. Do you think Santa accepts drawings? Caleb filled the coffee maker with water. The good ones are worth more than cash. Mine are very good. Then Santa may owe you money. Rosie considered that. Can Santa pay rent? Caleb's hand paused over the coffee grounds. The question was simple. Her voice was not afraid. That made it worse. He turned and leaned against the counter. Why are you asking? I heard Mr. Brennan talking in the hallway. What did he say? that people cannot live places for free. Caleb crossed the kitchen and sat across from her. You do not need to worry about Mr. Brennan. You worry about him. That is my job. I could worry a little. No. 5% zero. Rosie frowned. 2%. Caleb pretended to think about it. 1% and only on Tuesdays. It is Tuesday. He looked at the clock. So it is. She smiled and he reached across the table to tap one of the paper stars. What is this one for? Rosie lowered her voice. Mom. The star had been made from blue paper, Anna's favorite color. Caleb looked toward the photograph attached to the refrigerator with a faded magnet. In it, Anna stood beside Lake Michigan with wind lifting her hair across her face. She was laughing at something outside the frame. A much younger Rosie sat on Caleb's shoulders, both hands wrapped around his forehead. For years, Caleb had tried to remember the exact sound of Anna's laugh. Lately, he feared he was remembering the photograph instead. Rosie followed his gaze. Do you think she knows where we live now? Caleb looked back at her. She knows. Even if we move, his chest tightened. Even then. Rosie accepted the answer and reached for another piece of paper. Caleb stood before she could see the fear move through his face. He poured coffee into a chipped mug and opened the refrigerator. There were 2 eggs, half a carton of milk, and a plastic container of soup Ruth had sent home from the diner. He cooked 1 egg for Rosie and told her he had already eaten. She did not believe him. She cut the egg in half and placed 1 piece on his plate. You are not subtle, he said. I get that from you. By 6:35, Rosie was dressed for school. Caleb braided her hair twice before getting it right. Anna had tried to teach him years ago, laughing as his first attempt twisted in 3 different directions. He had improved. Not enough to make the braid beautiful, but enough to keep it from falling apart. Rosie studied herself in the bathroom mirror. It leans. It has character. It leans a lot. That is more character. She slipped on her coat while Caleb checked the kitchen table. The rent envelope held $410. The medicine envelope held $680. The school lunch envelope held $32. The Christmas envelope held nothing except 1 paper star. The rent was 9 days late. Rosie's specialist had changed her prescription after the rescue inhaler stopped working as well as it once had. The clinic had submitted 2 insurance appeals. Both had disappeared into the quiet machinery of pending review. Caleb placed the envelopes inside a kitchen drawer and shut it. His phone rang. Ruth Parker's name appeared on the screen. Caleb answered while helping Rosie with her zipper. You are calling too early to ask me for free labor. Ruth's voice came through, surrounded by the noise of plates and a radio playing softly in the diner. I never ask for free labor. I offer coffee and emotional support. Your coffee is a labor violation. You drink 4 cups a day. Evidence of poor judgment. Ruth lowered her voice. I have a paying job. Caleb stopped smiling. How paying $240? Maybe more if they like you. Who is they? The Ashford Grand. Caleb looked toward the clock. What broke some sensor in the underground service area? Their regular contractor is stuck in Milwaukee. A friend of my nephew works security there and called around. What time they need someone before 10? I have Rosie's clinic appointment at 4. You will be finished by noon. Caleb hesitated. $240 would not buy the new medication. It would not solve the rent. It would not change December. But it could cover the specialist fee and put fuel in the truck. I will take it. I already told them you would. You have too much confidence in me. No, I have exactly enough. He ended the call and found Rosie watching him. Hotel job. How did you know? You use your serious eyebrows for hotel jobs. I have serious eyebrows. They look worried. He pulled on his coat. They look distinguished. They look old. Go get your backpack. Outside Chicago was the color of wet concrete. Snow from the previous week had hardened along the curbs stained gray by traffic. Wind moved between the buildings and found every opening in Caleb's jacket. His truck needed 3 attempts before the engine turned over. Rosie climbed inside and held her hands near the vents. Do rich hotels have warm garages? I believe that is how they become rich, by having warm garages, among other crimes. Rosie laughed, then coughed again. Caleb glanced at her. She looked out the window. I am okay. He did not answer. At school, Rosie unfastened her seatbelt but did not open the door. Dad. Yes. If the medicine is too much, I can keep using the old one. Caleb looked at her carefully. Why would you think it is too much? You put the paper from the clinic under the cereal box. He remembered the bill. He had hidden it quickly after opening the mail. You were not supposed to see that. I was looking for cereal. There was no cereal under the bill. I checked everywhere. Caleb rested one hand on the steering wheel. The new medicine is not your problem. But you said problems belong to the people who can fix them. And I can fix this one. How? He smiled. That is classified. Rosie studied him with the same serious eyes Anna used to have when she knew he was hiding fear. Then she leaned across the seat and hugged him. Okay. He held her tighter than usual. When she stepped onto the sidewalk, he watched until she entered the building. Only then did he allow his expression to fall. Across the city, Madeline Ashford woke in a bedroom larger than Caleb's entire apartment. The windows stretched from the floor to the ceiling, looking east over Lake Michigan. The water was dark beneath the winter sky, its surface broken by lines of white. Her phone had been vibrating for 9 minutes. She reached for it without opening her eyes. 3 messages from her assistant, 2 from legal, 1 from Preston Shaw. Board materials updated. Need your approval before noon. Madeline sat up. The room was perfectly warm. The sheets were expensive. The silence pressed against her from every direction. She walked barefoot into the kitchen where breakfast had been delivered and arranged beneath silver covers. Coffee, fresh fruit, eggs she would not eat. Her schedule waited on a tablet beside the plate. Investor call at 7:30. Property acquisition review at 8:15. Operations meeting at 9. Press preparation at 10. Children First Fund luncheon at noon. Charity dinner at the Ashford Grand at 7. Board review at 9 the following morning. Isaiah Brooks waited near the private elevator when she emerged in a charcoal coat. He glanced at the untouched breakfast tray being removed by staff. You pay people to prepare food you never eat. Madeline checked her phone. I am supporting employment. You are avoiding breakfast. I have a call in 4 minutes. You also had breakfast 9 minutes ago. The elevator doors opened. Madeline stepped inside. Isaiah followed. He had driven her for 6 years and ignored nearly every boundary that would have silenced another employee. You look tired, he said. I look busy. Those are not the same thing. They are today. The elevator descended. Madeline watched the numbers change above the door. Isaiah adjusted his gloves. Your mother used to eat before meetings. My mother also wore gardening shoes to shareholder dinners. She was memorable. She was terrifying. She was kind. Madeline looked at him. Isaiah met her eyes in the mirrored wall. The elevator reached the garage. Neither of them spoke again. At Ashford Tower, Preston Shaw was waiting outside the executive conference room. He wore a dark blue suit, a silver tie, and the calm expression of a man who never appeared hurried because he made other people hurry for him. He handed Madeline a folder. Revised fund figures. She opened it while walking. Why are emergency approvals down processing delays? How long temporary? We changed review vendors last quarter. Families are waiting. Families are always waiting for something. Madeline stopped. Preston's smile appeared immediately. That sounded colder than I intended. It usually does. He opened the conference room door for her. The important thing is that the Children First Fund remains healthy. Donations are up. Administrative costs are within target. We will resolve the backlog. Madeline glanced at the summary. The numbers looked clean. Too clean, though she did not know why. She signed the first page. Preston relaxed so slightly that another person might not have noticed. Madeline did. What is on the board agenda tomorrow? Expansion, insurance exposure, and the annual charitable review. You have the supporting files on an encrypted drive. He reached inside his jacket and held up a silver flash drive. I will place it in your wallet before dinner. Legal does not want the files transmitted electronically. Why sensitive donor information? Madeline nodded and moved into the meeting. Preston remained outside for a moment. When no one was watching, his thumb pressed hard against the edge of the drive. At 9:12, Caleb entered the underground service corridor of the Ashford Grand, carrying a metal toolbox. The hotel above him smelled of polished wood, expensive flowers, and coffee roasted somewhere guests could see it. The garage smelled of oil concrete and melting snow. A young security guard named Luis led Caleb toward a steel cabinet mounted near a pipe junction. The temperature alarm keeps failing, Luis said. Engineering reset it twice. Did anyone check the sensor wiring? They said the wiring was fine. They always say that before someone checks the wiring. Caleb opened the cabinet. The sensor had been installed too close to a condensation line. Water had collected behind the casing and corroded the terminals. He showed Luis. This is not a software problem. That is what they told us. Software gets blamed when people do not want to kneel on concrete. Luis smiled. You used to do this full time. Something like it. Caleb removed the damaged connector and rebuilt the terminal with parts from his toolbox. While he worked, hotel employees passed through the service corridor. Most did not look at him. One manager stepped over his extension cord without acknowledging him. Caleb moved the cord out of the way and continued. At 11:38, the alarm system came back online. Luis checked the monitor. All zones are reading. Caleb closed the cabinet. Keep the drain line clear. If it backs up again, the same thing happens. Luis signed the invoice. You saved them from replacing the whole control unit. They were going to replace it. That was the plan. Caleb looked at the repaired sensor. The unit was fine. Luis shrugged. People like buying new things. Caleb folded the invoice and placed it in his jacket. His phone displayed 3 missed calls from Rosie's school. The blood drained from his face. He called immediately. The school nurse answered. Mr. Turner. Rosie had difficulty breathing after recess. We used her rescue inhaler. She is stable, but I think she should be seen today. I am on my way. She says she has a clinic appointment at 4. I will get her there earlier. He grabbed his toolbox and moved toward the employee exit. At the opposite end of the garage, Preston stepped out of the executive elevator. He looked around. The security booth was empty. He had arranged for Luis to inspect a delivery on the loading level. Madeline's black leather wallet was inside his coat. The silver drive rested in a hidden sleeve. Preston crossed toward the company town car and stopped beside the rear wheel. He removed the wallet and opened it. $40,000 filled the cash compartment. The money had been withdrawn for a private acquisition deposit later that evening. Madeline had insisted on carrying it herself. Preston had argued against it. Now the cash made the setup more convincing. He connected the silver drive to a small device in his palm. A light blinked twice. He disconnected it, placed it back in the wallet, then crouched beside the car. From the service corridor came the sound of a metal toolbox closing. Preston glanced over his shoulder. A maintenance worker in a worn canvas jacket was approaching from the far side of the garage. Preston could not see his face clearly. He placed the wallet near the rear tire, stood, and walked toward the stairwell. Caleb entered the parking lane 30 seconds later. His phone vibrated with a message from Rosie. Nurse says breathing is bad again. Do not worry, I am okay. He read it while walking and nearly passed the wallet. The black leather caught the light near the tire. Caleb stopped. He looked toward the security booth. Empty. He set down his toolbox and picked up the wallet. The leather was soft beneath his cold fingers. He opened it. The money was impossible to miss. Bands of $100 bills filled the compartment. Caleb stared. For a few seconds, the garage became silent. $40,000 could pay the rent for years. It could buy Rosie's medication before sunset. It could repair the truck, renew his engineering license, clear the clinic debt, and put food in every envelope on the kitchen table. He imagined Rosie sleeping without the rescue inhaler beside her hand. He imagined telling Mr. Brennan the rent would never be late again. He imagined buying a real Christmas tree. His fingers tightened around the wallet. His phone vibrated once more. A photograph appeared. Rosie had sent it from the nurse's office. She was holding the stuffed fox in her lap and trying to smile. Under the photograph, she had written, "I am being brave." Caleb closed his eyes. Anna's voice returned from a winter years earlier when they had found a contractor's overpayment in their bank account. We do not get to become someone else just because life gets expensive. He opened the wallet again and searched for identification. Madeline Ashford, Chief Executive Officer, Ashford Hospitality Group. He looked toward the elevator bank. The security booth remained empty. Caleb waited. 1 minute, then 2. He checked the time. Rosie was waiting. Still, he did not leave the wallet where someone else might take it. He picked up his toolbox and entered the elevator. Inside the mirrored car, his reflection looked older than 38. Wet hair, tired eyes, grease along one sleeve. A wallet worth more than everything he owned held openly in both hands. The elevator rose. When the doors opened into the marble lobby, Caleb approached the front desk. "I found this in the garage." The clerk looked at the identification card. Her face changed. Within minutes, security arrived. Then Preston. Then Madeline. The questions came before the thanks. The suspicion came before the facts. By the time Caleb stepped back into the rain, Rosie had already been transferred from the school nurse's office to Lakeview Children's Specialty Clinic. He drove north with the empty pharmacy bag on the passenger seat and the memory of $40,000 still burning in his hands. Madeline's black SUV followed at a distance. At the clinic entrance, Caleb rushed inside without looking behind him. Madeline remained in the back seat watching the doors close. Isaiah looked at her through the rearview mirror. "Are we still following him because you think he stole something?" Madeline kept her eyes on the clinic. "I do not know anymore." Isaiah rested one hand on the steering wheel. "Then maybe you are following him because you are afraid he did not." Madeline opened the door and stepped into the cold. What she saw through the rain. Madeline crossed the clinic parking lot with the cold pressing through her coat. The glass doors opened beneath a faded blue sign. Warm air touched her face, carrying the smell of disinfectant, wet fabric, and coffee that had been left on a burner too long. A television played a cartoon in the waiting room with the volume low. A young mother slept upright with a toddler against her chest. Somewhere beyond the reception desk, a child coughed. Madeline stopped near the end of the hallway. Caleb stood at the billing counter with both hands resting on the edge. His shoulders were still wet from the rain. The empty pharmacy bag hung from one fist. The clerk spoke quietly. The insurance company denied the appeal again. Caleb lowered his voice. The doctor marked it urgent. "I know. She had another episode at school. I know Mr. Turner. I called twice myself." He took the folded envelope from inside his jacket. "How much is it without approval?" The clerk hesitated. $3,140. For 1 month. Yes. Caleb opened the envelope and counted the bills inside. Madeline could see the careful way he separated them, flattening each one against the counter. "I have 680. The clerk looked at him with the helpless expression of someone who had given the same answer too many times. "The pharmacy cannot release it unless the balance is paid. What if I leave this and bring the rest Friday? I wish I could do that." Caleb stared at the money in his hand. Madeline felt the weight of her wallet inside her coat. $40,000. He had held enough money to buy the medication for an entire year. He had stood alone in a parking garage with no one beside him, no one stopping him, and a sick child waiting across the city. He had returned every bill. A curtain moved farther down the hallway. Dad Caleb turned so quickly that the fear in his face appeared before he could hide it. Rosie stood beside a nurse wearing a coat over her school clothes. Her stuffed fox was tucked beneath one arm. A clear plastic mask hung around her neck. Caleb folded the money and placed it back inside the envelope. There she is. He walked to her and lowered himself to one knee. Rosie searched his face. Did they give you the medicine? Caleb lifted the pharmacy bag. They are still working on the paperwork. That means no. It means paperwork. You make the same face when the answer is no. He touched the end of her nose. You are becoming difficult to fool. I have always been difficult to fool. The nurse handed Caleb a discharge sheet. She is stable, but watch her closely tonight. Keep the rescue inhaler nearby. If the wheezing gets worse, bring her back. I will. The specialist will call the insurance company again in the morning. Caleb nodded. Thank you. The nurse lowered her voice. I am sorry. Caleb gave her a tired smile. You did not make the rules. He helped Rosie into her coat. She leaned against him while he fastened the buttons. Madeline moved farther into the shadow beside the hallway wall. She knew she should step forward. She should tell him she was there. She should apologize for the hotel. She should offer to pay for the medication and allow him to decide whether to accept. Instead, she remained hidden. Shame had made her curious. Now shame made her silent. Caleb lifted Rosie into his arms. You are too big for this, he said. You say that every time. One day I will mean it. Not today. Not today. Rosie rested her head against his shoulder. They passed within several feet of Madeline. Caleb smelled faintly of rain engine oil and cold air. Rosie's eyes were closed. Her breathing came in small, uneven sounds against his collar. Madeline watched them disappear through the doors. Isaiah was waiting beside the SUV. You found your answer? Madeline looked toward Caleb's truck. No. Isaiah opened the rear door. What are you looking for now? She did not respond. Caleb settled Rosie into the passenger seat, wrapped a blanket around her legs, and checked her inhaler before starting the engine. Madeline climbed into the SUV. Keep following him. Isaiah did not move. Madeline. She looked at him. He rarely used her first name while working. You have already crossed one line tonight. I know. Then why cross another? She watched Caleb's truck pull away. Because I treated him like a criminal. That does not give you the right to turn his life into evidence. The words struck harder because Isaiah spoke them without anger. Madeline looked down. You are right. Isaiah waited. She should have told him to take her home. Instead, she said, Stay far enough back that he does not see us. Isaiah exhaled slowly, then shifted into drive. They followed Caleb north through streets shining with rain. His truck moved away from the hospitals and downtown towers. The buildings became shorter. The sidewalks narrowed. Storefronts were protected by metal gates. Snowmelt gathered in potholes reflecting red traffic lights in the blue glow of a laundromat sign. Caleb turned into the parking lot of a brick apartment building beside a closed tire shop. The building leaned slightly toward the alley. Several balconies had rust along the rails. A porch light buzzed above the entrance. Caleb carried Rosie up the outside stairs. Madeline watched from across the street. The apartment door opened. Warm yellow light spilled onto the landing. For several minutes, the curtains remained open. Madeline could see only pieces of the room. A small kitchen table, a narrow couch, a portable heater, a stack of books arranged into the shape of a Christmas tree. Caleb placed Rosie in a chair and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. He filled a kettle, removed his wet jacket, and spread it across the back of another chair. Rosie pointed toward the refrigerator. Caleb opened it and took out a container of soup. He moved through the kitchen with the quiet speed of someone who had repeated the same routine many times. Soup into a pot, inhaler on the table, shoes lined beside the door, towel beneath the leaking window. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was left to chance. Rosie reached for the kitchen drawer. Caleb stopped her gently, then opened it himself. He removed 4 envelopes. Madeline recognized the words written across them. Rent, medicine, school lunch, Christmas. Caleb opened the rent envelope first. He counted the money twice, then the medicine envelope, then the lunch money. He looked at the final envelope. Rosie watched him. He opened it. A single blue paper star slid onto the table. Rosie picked it up. Even through the rain, Madeline could see Caleb's expression soften. Rosie said something. Caleb shook his head. She said it again, louder. Santa can have the drawing. The partially open window carried her voice across the street. Caleb leaned against the counter. Santa does not need your money. He might need the star. He might. Rosie looked toward the stack of books wrapped in green paper. Will he still come if we move? Caleb became still. Madeline felt her own breath catch. He walked to Rosie and crouched beside the chair. Why do you think we are moving, Mr. Brennan put a yellow paper on the door. Caleb glanced toward the entrance. From the SUV, Madeline could just see the corner of an official notice taped to the wood. Caleb turned back to Rosie. I am going to talk to him tomorrow. That does not answer the question. He smiled faintly. You get that from your mother. Did she ask too many questions? She asked exactly enough. Rosie touched the paper star. If we move, can we take her picture? Caleb looked toward the refrigerator. That is the first thing I pack, and the fox the second, and the books we may need to negotiate. Rosie smiled. Caleb pressed his forehead against hers. For one brief second, his eyes closed. When he stood, he turned away from the window and placed one hand over his face. There was no audience inside the apartment, no security guard, no CEO, no one to reward him for being strong. He allowed himself one silent moment. Then he picked up a wooden spoon, held it as though it weighed 50 pounds, and staggered toward the stove. Rosie laughed. Caleb pretended the spoon pulled him to the floor. Her laughter grew louder until it became a cough. He was beside her immediately. The game disappeared from his face, replaced by concentration. He counted her breaths. Madeline looked away. Isaiah sat behind the wheel without speaking. The rain tapped softly against the roof of the SUV. After several minutes, Madeline reached for the door handle. Isaiah looked at her. What are you doing? I can pay for the medicine. You can. The rent, too. You can. She looked toward the apartment. Then why does it feel wrong? Because you are thinking about walking into a stranger's home after following him there. Madeline released the handle. Isaiah turned slightly in his seat. You want to help him? Yes. Then ask him how. He will refuse. Maybe. He refused a reward. That was not a reward. That was money offered, because everyone in that lobby had already decided what kind of man he was. Madeline looked at the wallet in her lap. Take me home. Isaiah started the engine. As the SUV pulled away, Caleb stood near the apartment window with Rosie in his arms. He did not look outside. At 3:12 the next morning, Madeline was still awake. She stood in the kitchen of her penthouse wearing a gray sweater, staring at the city through the glass. The storm had moved east. Chicago glittered beneath a clear black sky. From this height, the roads looked clean. The neighborhoods looked orderly. Distance turned every hardship into light. The wallet sat on the counter. Madeline removed the cash. She counted each band. $40,000. She placed the money beside the clinic receipt she had found folded inside her coat pocket. She had taken it from the trash near the billing counter without thinking. $3,140. She looked from one amount to the other. Her phone lit up. Preston had sent 3 messages. Need the drive before the board meeting. Security believes Turner may have handled confidential material. Recommend immediate background review. Madeline read the messages twice. Then she turned her phone face down. At 8:20, she entered Ruthie's Grill wearing dark jeans, flat boots, and the same gray sweater. A wool cap covered most of her hair. She had chosen the diner because she remembered seeing the name printed on one of Caleb's invoices. The room smelled of bacon, maple syrup coffee, and old wood. Truck drivers sat at the counter. 2 nurses shared pancakes near the window. A radio played quietly beside the kitchen door. A woman with silver hair approached Madeline's booth. Coffee. Yes, please. Breakfast, just toast. The woman studied her. You came all the way to Ruthie's for toast? Madeline looked up. The woman's name tag read Ruth. I was nearby. No, you were not. Madeline held her gaze. Ruth filled the coffee cup. You are the hotel woman. Madeline's hand tightened around the menu. You recognize me. I read the news. Also, nobody from this neighborhood wears a coat like that and tries to hide under a $12 hat. Madeline lowered her voice. I did not come to cause trouble. Trouble rarely announces itself. Before Madeline could respond, the back door opened. Caleb entered carrying his toolbox. His jacket had dried, but the shoulders were still stained dark from the rain. He looked as though he had slept even less than Madeline. Ruth turned toward him. How is Rosie home from school? Breathing better. That is not what I asked. Caleb placed the toolbox beside the counter. She had a hard night. Ruth's face softened. I can bring soup later. You brought soup yesterday, and somehow you survived it. Caleb noticed Madeline. Recognition appeared slowly. He looked at her hat, then at Ruth. Ruth lifted one shoulder. She ordered toast. Caleb's eyes returned to Madeline. Of course she did. Ruth pointed toward the kitchen. The sink is leaking again. It was leaking last week. You fixed the pipe. Now the faucet is jealous. Caleb carried his toolbox through the swinging door. Madeline remained in the booth. She listened to the sound of cabinets opening and metal tools touching porcelain. 10 minutes later, a man in a business suit raised his empty coffee cup. Excuse me. Ruth was carrying 3 plates. I will be right with you. I have been waiting 15 minutes. It has been 4. The man looked around the diner. Is service always this slow? Several conversations faded. Ruth set down the plates. We are short this morning. That is not my problem. Caleb stepped out of the kitchen, wiping his hands on a cloth. The coffee is fresh. The man looked at him. Do you work here? Caleb picked up the coffee pot. Today, apparently. He filled the man's cup, then moved along the counter and topped off 3 others. No lecture, no insult, no attempt to embarrass anyone. The tension left the room. The businessman looked down at his phone. Caleb returned to the kitchen. Ruth glanced at Madeline. That is who you followed. Madeline looked toward the swinging door. Yes. Did you find what you were looking for? I am not sure. Ruth placed the bill beside her coffee. That usually means you found something you did not want. Madeline left $100 bills beneath the edge of her plate. She stood and walked toward the register. Ruth saw the money. Her mouth tightened. Before she could speak, Caleb came out of the kitchen. Ms. Ashford. Madeline stopped. The diner grew quieter. Caleb walked to the table and picked up the money. He held it out. You forgot something. I did not forget it. Then you left it in the wrong place. It is for you. I know. His voice remained calm, but there was a wall inside it. Madeline did not take the money. You need it. So do a lot of people. Your daughter needs medication. His eyes changed. How do you know that Madeline looked around the diner? People were pretending not to listen. She lowered her voice. I was at the clinic. You followed us inside. Yes. And to my apartment? She hesitated. That was enough. Caleb placed the money on the table between them. You watched my daughter through a window. I know how that sounds. It sounds exactly like what happened. I was trying to understand. You could have asked. You would not have answered. That did not make it yours to take. Madeline felt heat rise beneath her coat. She had stood in rooms with senators, attorneys, and investors. She had defended decisions worth hundreds of millions of dollars. None of that helped her now. You are right. Caleb looked at her. The answer seemed to unsettle him. Madeline continued. I should not have followed you. I should not have watched your home. I should have thanked you in the hotel lobby, and I did not. Caleb's fingers rested against the folded bills. No, I allowed Preston to speak to you as if your clothes were evidence. You did more than allow it. Yes. Ruth stood near the register silent. Madeline looked directly at Caleb. I was wrong. He studied her face. The anger remained, but it shifted. Not forgiveness. Attention. Madeline pushed the money toward him. This is not a reward. Then what is it? Help. Help for who you? Caleb shook his head. That is what pity sounds like when it is trying to wear better clothes. Madeline absorbed the words. I do not pity you. You followed me home because you could not believe a poor man returned your money. She had no answer. Caleb continued. You saw my daughter. You saw the envelopes. Now you want to put money on the table and walk away feeling different. That is not fair. No. His voice softened. It is not. Madeline looked down at the bills. What would be fair? Caleb glanced toward the kitchen. Ruth needs a freezer that does not stop working every week. Ruth folded her arms. I did not invite myself into this conversation. Half the families in my building are behind on heating bills. The clinic has children waiting for approvals that never come. If you want to help where it does not turn someone's worst day into proof of your kindness. Madeline looked at him. And you? I returned your wallet. That is not what I asked. It is the only answer I have. Ruth brought 2 cups of coffee and placed them on the counter. You can both sit down, she said. Or you can keep blocking the register until lunch. Caleb looked at Madeline. She removed her coat. They sat 3 stools apart. For a while, neither spoke. Ruth placed toast in front of Madeline and eggs in front of Caleb. I did not order eggs, Caleb said. You also did not eat yesterday. That is an accusation. It is breakfast. Ruth walked away. Madeline looked at Caleb's hands. There was a healing cut across one knuckle. A faint burn marked his wrist. You fixed the hotel sensor. He glanced at her. How do you know I saw the invoice this morning? It was installed beside a condensation line. The report said the entire unit needed replacement. It did not. How much would that have cost? Probably $12,000. Madeline frowned. You fixed it for $240. That was the job. What did you do before maintenance work? Caleb took a drink of coffee. I fixed larger things. What kind, bridges? Madeline waited. He did not continue. You were an engineer. I was. Why did you leave? His eyes moved toward the window. Life changed. The answer closed the door without slamming it. Madeline respected that. She looked down at the toast. My father used to say everyone has a price. Caleb glanced at her. Did he? He believed trust was what people called poor preparation. That sounds lonely. He was rarely alone. That is not the same thing. Madeline looked at him. For the first time, his expression held no accusation, only recognition. She realized Caleb understood loneliness without needing it, explained. Ruth placed the folded money in front of Madeline. Take it with you. Madeline slipped the bills into her coat. Caleb finished half the eggs. When he stood, she spoke. May I ask one question? You just did. A faint smile touched his face. Madeline almost returned it. Why did you bring the wallet upstairs? Caleb picked up his toolbox. Because your name was inside. No. I mean, why did you return it when you needed the money? He looked toward the diner window. Snow had begun to fall in thin white lines. My wife used to say we do not get to become someone else because life gets expensive. Madeline said nothing. Caleb lifted the toolbox. She was usually right. He walked toward the kitchen. Madeline watched him disappear through the swinging door. At Ashford Tower, she searched his name herself. She did not call security. She did not ask Preston. The first results were ordinary. A maintenance license, an address, a small claim filed by a former landlord. Then she found an engineering journal from 9 years earlier. Caleb Turner stood beside a temporary bridge support system in southern Illinois. He wore a white hard hat and a clean jacket. He looked younger, but the eyes were the same. The article described him as a rising structural engineer who had helped reopen rural roads after severe flooding. Madeline opened another result. Anna Turner killed in highway collision. Husband and daughter survive. A third article mentioned a community design award. Then the records changed. Medical debt, missed payments, a suspended professional license, a closed consulting company. The story was not scandal. It was erosion. One bill, one absence, one emergency, one door closing after another, until a man who once designed bridges was repairing diner sinks for breakfast. Madeline printed the engineering article. The office door opened. Preston entered without knocking. His eyes moved to Caleb's photograph. "You are still looking into him." "I am looking into what we missed." Preston placed a report on her desk. "Security found irregularities." "What kind?" "The wallet contained confidential financial material." He admitted opening it. "He opened it to find my identification." That is his explanation. It is also what he told us before he knew there were cameras. Preston's smile remained. Desperate people are often convincing. Madeline looked at him. "What does that mean?" "It means his daughter is sick. His rent is overdue. He has no stable employment. $40,000 would solve several problems." He returned it, which gave him access to you. Madeline closed the report. "You think he planned to be accused in front of a hotel lobby? I think men like Turner understand sympathy better than you believe." The words sounded familiar, not because Preston had said them before, because Madeline had believed some version of them for years. Her phone vibrated. A message from Isaiah appeared. 2 officers just entered Ruthie's Grill with Ashford security. Madeline stood. Preston watched her. "What did you do?" "I protected the company." She picked up her coat. "From what?" "From a man who handled confidential property." Madeline moved toward the door. Preston called after her. "You are allowing emotion to interfere with judgment." She stopped but did not turn. "No." Her hand tightened around the printed photograph of Caleb standing beside the bridge. "I am finally questioning whose judgment I have been using." At Ruthie's Grill, Caleb was kneeling beside the freezer motor when the front bell rang. Rosie sat in a booth near the kitchen, coloring a paper star. 2 police officers entered. An Ashford security manager followed them. The diner became quiet, one table at a time. The taller officer looked across the room. Caleb Turner. Caleb stood slowly. "That is me." Rosie looked up from the paper star. The officer removed a document from inside his coat. "We need you to come with us regarding stolen executive data." Caleb's eyes moved first to Rosie, then to the security manager, then to the badge in the officer's hand. Rosie slipped out of the booth and walked toward him. "That is my dad," Rosie said. Her voice was small, but it carried through the diner. Caleb set the screwdriver on the counter and wiped his hands on a cloth. He did not look at the customers watching him. He looked only at Rosie. The taller officer stepped forward. "Mr. Turner, this does not have to be difficult." Caleb gave a faint nod. "Then let us not make it difficult." The Ashford security manager opened a leather folder. "The wallet you returned contained confidential company files. We have reason to believe those files may have been accessed while the wallet was in your possession." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "I opened the wallet long enough to find the name." "Did you see the silver drive?" "Yes." "Did you remove it?" "No." "Did you connect it to a computer or another device?" "No." The security manager glanced at the officers. "Can you prove that silence spread through the room?" A coffee cup touched a saucer near the window. Someone whispered at the counter. A customer raised a phone and aimed it toward Caleb. Rosie saw the phone. Her face changed. "My dad does not steal." Caleb moved immediately. He crossed the few feet between them and knelt in front of her, placing his body between Rosie and the people watching. "Look at me." Her eyes filled with tears. "They think you did something bad. They are wrong. They are saying it where everyone can hear. Caleb took both of her hands. Someone can be wrong about you without changing who you are. Rosie looked toward the officers. Are they taking you away? They are asking me questions. That is not what I asked. He swallowed. The taller officer shifted his weight. We are not placing your father under arrest. Rosie looked at the officer. Then why did you bring 2 police cars? No one answered. Caleb touched her cheek. You are going to stay here with Ruth. No. Rosie, I can come with you. You need to rest. I will rest there. Not today. Her fingers tightened around his hands. Caleb kept his voice steady. Do you remember what Mom used to say when storms got loud? Rosie blinked through her tears. That the house was stronger than the noise. That is right. But we are not in the house. Caleb pressed his forehead against hers. Then I am the house. Rosie closed her eyes. Behind them, Ruth moved closer. I have her, she said. Caleb stood and looked at Ruth. There was anger in her face, but also a promise. He handed her his work gloves. The inhaler is in the side pocket of her backpack. I know. She needs the second dose at 4. I know. If her breathing changes, I know Caleb. He nodded. Rosie grabbed his sleeve. Do not leave. Caleb turned back to her. I am coming home. Promise. He held her gaze. Promise. The officer gestured toward the door. Caleb walked between the tables without lowering his head. The customer near the window kept recording. Caleb saw the phone. He saw the Ashford name stitched across the security manager's coat. He saw the way several customers looked down as he passed, embarrassed to meet his eyes. Outside, cold air struck his face. The police car waited at the curb with lights flashing against the diner windows. Caleb stopped before the rear door. Am I being detained? The officer answered carefully. We need a formal statement. You are not under arrest. Then I will sit in the front. The officer looked at his partner. The second officer opened the passenger door. Caleb climbed in. Through the window, he saw Rosie standing behind the diner glass with Ruth's arm around her shoulders. The car pulled away. Ruth closed the blinds. Madeline arrived 6 minutes later. Isaiah had not fully stopped the SUV before she opened the door. She crossed the sidewalk and entered the diner. The room turned toward her. The silence was different from the silence Caleb had left behind. This one had direction. Rosie sat in a booth with her stuffed fox held against her chest. Ruth sat beside her. The blue paper star lay unfinished on the table. Madeline removed her gloves. Where is Caleb? Ruth looked at her. You know where he is. I told security to stop the report. Then your people listened to you about as well as you listened to him. Madeline looked at Rosie. The child did not return her gaze. I am going to bring him back. Rosie stared at the paper star. That is what he said. Madeline took one step closer. Rosie, no. The word was quiet. Madeline stopped. Rosie looked up. You watched us. Madeline felt the room close around her. Rosie continued. Dad told Ruth you followed us to the clinic and our apartment. I am sorry. You have a lot of people who listen when you talk. Madeline could not deny it. Rosie's voice trembled. So why did they take him? Madeline looked at the Ashford logo on the abandoned security folder near the counter. Because someone used my name to make a lie sound official. Rosie held the stuffed fox tighter. Then make the truth sound louder. Ruth looked away, blinking quickly. Madeline reached for her phone. She called the company security office. The supervisor answered on the second ring. Ms. Ashford, withdraw the complaint against Caleb Turner. There is already a police inquiry. Then tell them the company is no longer alleging theft. Mr. Shaw authorized. I did not ask who authorized it. The diner remained silent as Madeline spoke. Send every report, email, camera file, and access record connected to my wallet to outside counsel. No one alters or deletes anything. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. and remove Preston Shaw's access to the case. There was a pause. Ma'am, he is the Chief Financial Officer. I know his title. She ended the call. Isaiah stood near the door. Station Madeline nodded. Before leaving, she looked at Ruth. Please stay with Rosie. Ruth folded her arms. I was planning to. Madeline looked at the child. I am bringing your father home. Rosie did not answer. The police station was 12 minutes away. Madeline spent the drive making calls. She contacted an attorney who had never worked for Ashford Hospitality. She told him to represent Caleb, not the company. She called the police commander and stated that the company could not confirm any theft. She called her assistant and canceled every meeting for the rest of the day. Preston called 3 times. Madeline ignored him. At the station, a desk officer recognized her immediately. His posture changed. Ms. Ashford, we were told company counsel was handling this. They are not. She placed her identification on the counter. I need to know why Caleb Turner is being questioned. The officer checked the computer. He agreed to provide a statement. Does he have an attorney? One is on the way. He is already here. The independent attorney entered behind Isaiah carrying a briefcase and wearing a dark wool coat. Madeline introduced herself. He did not offer his hand. Are you paying my fee? Yes. Then understand something. Mr. Turner is my client. You are not. That is why I called you. He studied her for a second, then approached the desk. Caleb sat inside a small interview room beneath fluorescent lights. The walls were pale gray. A metal table separated him from a detective and an Ashford security investigator. The detective had asked the same questions in 3 different ways. Caleb gave the same answers. He found the wallet beside a company vehicle. He opened it to find identification. He saw the cash. He saw the silver drive. He removed nothing. He copied nothing. He took the wallet directly to the hotel lobby. The security investigator leaned forward. You expect us to believe you did not even consider taking the money. Caleb looked at him. You asked what I did. I am asking what you thought. My thoughts are not company property. The detective lowered his pen. Mr. Turner, cooperation helps. I have cooperated. You seem angry. My daughter watched 2 police officers remove me from a diner while strangers filmed her crying. The detective looked down. Caleb continued. I am trying very hard to make sure anger is the only thing I give you. The door opened. The attorney entered. This interview is over. The security investigator stood. We are still waiting on company confirmation. The attorney placed his briefcase on the table. The company has withdrawn the allegation. The detective looked surprised. Caleb did not. He only looked tired. 20 minutes later, he walked into the corridor. Madeline stood near the vending machines. Caleb saw her and kept walking. Caleb. He stopped. Isaiah and the attorney remained several feet away. Madeline approached slowly. I am sorry. Caleb looked toward the exit. My daughter watched strangers put me in a police car. I know. No, you saw it. That is not the same as knowing it. Madeline's face tightened. You are right. He looked at her then. You keep saying that, because you keep being right. That does not fix anything. I know. His jaw tightened. People with power always believe fixing something later is the same as not breaking it. Madeline let the words reach her. She did not defend the company. She did not blame Preston. She did not remind him that she had withdrawn the complaint. I followed you because I expected you to reveal a motive, she said. Caleb remained still. I watched you at the clinic. I watched your home. I searched your name. I let Preston speak for you in the lobby before I asked whether he had earned the right. You had no right to search my life. No. You saw my daughter's medical bill? Yes. You saw the eviction notice? Yes. You saw things I did not choose to show you? I did. Caleb looked away. Madeline continued. I thought suspicion kept me safe. I did not understand how dangerous it became when everyone around me was punished by it. Caleb's expression did not soften. Do not turn my life into the story that makes you feel human. I will not. You cannot promise that. Then tell me what I can do. He looked through the glass doors toward the street. Snow had begun to collect along the curb. For several seconds, only the buzz of the vending machine filled the corridor. Then Caleb said, "Find out why a medical fund with millions of dollars could not approve one prescription." Madeline watched him. What fund? The clinic said Rosie's request was referred to Children First after the insurance denial. Madeline went still. The Ashford Fund. Yes. The application was denied, delayed. Denied. Lost. They use different words when they want families to stop asking. Madeline thought of the clean reports on her desk. Emergency approvals down. Processing delays. Temporary administrative issues. Preston's voice moved through her memory. Families are always waiting for something. Caleb picked up his jacket from the chair. Clear my name publicly. I will. Not with a private letter. I understand. And do not use Rosie. I will not. He opened the station door. Madeline followed him outside. Isaiah brought the SUV to the curb. Caleb shook his head. I can take the train. Your daughter is waiting. I know where the train goes. Madeline looked toward the falling snow. Your truck is still at the diner. He did not answer. Isaiah opened the rear door. You do not have to forgive anyone to accept a ride, he said. Caleb looked at him. Isaiah added, Also the heat works. Caleb almost smiled. He got in. The ride back to Ruthie's Grill was quiet. Madeline sat on one side of the rear seat. Caleb sat on the other. The space between them felt deliberate. Halfway there, Madeline's phone vibrated. Preston, she answered. Where are you? His voice was controlled, but only barely. I have been trying to protect you from a serious breach. You filed a criminal complaint without my approval. I followed established procedure. You used a police contact. I acted quickly. You accused a man without evidence. He had access to confidential material. He returned it. That does not mean he did not copy it. Madeline looked at Caleb. He watched the city through the window. What evidence do you have that he accessed the drive? The opportunity itself is evidence. No, it is opportunity. Preston lowered his voice. You are allowing his circumstances to influence you. His circumstances did not put my wallet in that garage. Silence. Madeline heard it. A fraction too long. Where were you last night before the charity dinner at the hotel? Where in the hotel? Several places. Were you in the parking garage? Preston answered too quickly. No. Madeline ended the call. Caleb looked at her. He lied. Maybe. You know the difference between maybe and yes. She did. At the diner, Rosie ran outside before the SUV had fully stopped. Caleb opened the door and caught her as she reached him. She wrapped both arms around his waist. You promised. I promised. Ruth stood in the doorway with tears in her eyes. Caleb looked over Rosie's head at Madeline. The anger remained, but something else stood beside it now. Not trust. Possibility. Madeline stayed near the curb. She did not enter the diner. She did not interrupt the reunion. Caleb carried Rosie inside. On the table, the unfinished paper star waited beside her crayons. That evening, Caleb returned to the apartment and found Mr. Brennan standing near the stairs. The landlord held the yellow notice in one hand. Rosie stopped behind Caleb. Mr. Brennan looked uncomfortable. I heard about the police. Caleb's face hardened. You heard wrong. I am not saying I believe anything. That usually means you do. Mr. Brennan glanced toward Rosie. I cannot extend the rent again. I get paid Friday. You said that last month. My daughter had an emergency. Everyone has an emergency. Caleb took the notice. How long until Monday? 3 days. That is all I can give you. Rosie slipped her hand into Caleb's. Mr. Brennan walked away. Across the street, Madeline stood beside the SUV. She had followed them only as far as the building, then stopped where Caleb could see her. This time she did not hide. Caleb looked at her. She approached but remained at the bottom of the stairs. "I have work," she said. He looked at the notice in his hand. "I am not interested in a favor. It is not one. What kind of work? Ashford Housing owns 6 apartment buildings on the west side. We received structural complaints last year. The reports were incomplete. Why are you telling me? I need an independent review. You have engineers. I have contractors who keep approving repairs without entering the basements." Caleb studied her. "You researched me." "Yes. You know my license expired. You can consult under the supervision of the outside engineering firm. You are inventing a job. The buildings exist. The violations exist. I should have ordered the review months ago." "Why me?" Madeline removed a folded page from her coat. It was the old article showing Caleb beside the bridge. "Because you know what you are looking at." He stared at the photograph. Rosie looked around his arm. "You built that?" Caleb did not answer. Madeline held out the page. He took it. For a moment, the years between the man in the photograph and the man on the stairs seemed visible. "I am not accepting anything until my name is cleared," Caleb said. "It will be. Not because I made you feel guilty. No, because it is true." Madeline held his gaze. "Because it is true." A cough interrupted them. Rosie bent forward, one hand pressed to her chest. Caleb dropped the article. He knelt and reached for the inhaler in her backpack. Rosie took one dose, then another. Her breathing did not ease. Caleb looked toward the parking lot. His truck sat near the curb. He turned the key. The engine clicked once and died. He tried again. Nothing. Madeline opened the SUV door. "Get in." Caleb lifted Rosie. Isaiah drove toward the clinic while Caleb held the inhaler near Rosie's mouth. Madeline sat in the front seat, giving them space. At the emergency entrance, Caleb carried Rosie inside. Madeline followed only after he looked back and gave a small nod. The nurse took Rosie immediately. Caleb sat in the waiting room with both elbows on his knees. Madeline sat across from him. Neither spoke for several minutes. The clock above the reception desk moved with a soft, mechanical click. Caleb stared at the floor. "Anna died in January," he said. Madeline remained still. "We were driving home from her parents' house. A truck crossed the median. His voice was level. Rosie was in the back seat. The impact damaged her lungs. She was 4. Madeline looked toward the treatment doors. "I am sorry. Everyone said that." "I know. No one knew what to say after." "What did you need them to say?" Caleb thought about it. "Nothing. I needed someone to sit in the room without trying to make the room less terrible." Madeline looked down at her hands. "I can do that." He glanced at her. She did not move closer. The treatment room remained closed. After a while, Caleb leaned back against the wall. "I stopped planning after Anna died. Planning what? Anything beyond the next appointment. The next bill. The next night, Rosie could breathe." Madeline watched the light above the clinic door. "I plan every hour of my life. Does it help? No. What do you plan for?" She gave a humorless smile. "Meetings, acquisitions, problems that arrive with folders. That is not a life. I have a life." Caleb looked at her. "You have a schedule." Madeline met his eyes. The truth of the sentence settled between them without cruelty. A nurse entered the waiting room. Mr. Turner. Caleb stood. "Rosie is responding to treatment. Her oxygen level is improving." His shoulders lowered. "Can I see her in a few minutes?" The nurse walked away. Caleb sat again. Madeline's phone vibrated. Isaiah had sent a message. The hotel's main garage recording had been deleted, but an automated backup existed in the elevator control system. Preston's access card entered the garage 3 minutes before Caleb found the wallet. Madeline read the message twice. She handed the phone to Caleb. He studied the times. Preston was in the garage. "Yes." "He told you he was not?" Yes. Caleb looked at the sequence again. He placed it there. Madeline felt the answer before she accepted it. Why Caleb rested his thumb beside the access record. When a bridge fails, everyone looks at the part that broke. He handed the phone back. Sometimes the real cause is the weight someone placed there on purpose. Madeline looked at the access record on her phone until the numbers blurred. Preston had entered the garage 3 minutes before Caleb found the wallet. He had denied being there. Caleb sat beside her in the clinic waiting room, his hands clasped loosely between his knees. The quiet around him was different now. Not exhaustion, concentration. Madeline had seen that expression in the photograph beside the bridge. The engineer had returned. Isaiah called again. "I found the building systems manager," he said. "The main parking footage was erased at 2:06 this morning. The elevator cameras store their own copy for 48 hours. Who can access it? Technically only security. And actually, Preston approved the last system upgrade. His office has administrator privileges." Madeline stood. "Preserve everything. Do not send it through company email. I already contacted outside counsel." "Good." She ended the call. Caleb looked toward the treatment doors. "You should stay with Rosie," Madeline said. "I am staying. I can handle the investigation." He looked at her. "Your people already handled it once." The words were not cruel, but they closed the argument. A nurse stepped into the waiting room. "Mr. Turner, you can see her now." Caleb rose immediately. Madeline remained near the chairs. He took 2 steps, then turned. "You can come." She followed him into the treatment room. Rosie sat upright in bed with a clear tube beneath her nose. Color had returned to her cheeks. Her stuffed fox rested beneath one arm. She looked at Caleb first, then at Madeline. "You both look like someone stole something." Caleb sat beside her. Nothing was stolen. Rosie studied his face. "That means something was stolen." Madeline nearly smiled. Caleb touched Rosie's hair. "How do you feel hungry?" "That is a good sign. I want pancakes." "At night pancakes do not know what time it is." Madeline pulled a chair closer to the bed. Rosie looked at her coat. "You came back." "Yes." "Did you find the truth?" Madeline glanced at Caleb. "We found where to begin." Rosie seemed satisfied. She reached for a purple crayon on the bedside tray and continued coloring a paper star. Caleb watched her for several seconds before speaking. "Ruth can stay with her." Madeline looked at him. "You do not have to come." "I know." "Then why are you?" Caleb turned toward the window. Snow pressed softly against the glass. "Because someone chose me to carry their lie." His voice lowered. "I want to know why." An hour later, Ruth arrived at the clinic carrying a paper bag from the diner. She placed pancakes beside Rosie and pointed at Caleb. "You leave before I change my mind." Caleb kissed Rosie's forehead. "I will call. You always say that. I always do. Sometimes late. Then I will call early." Rosie looked at Madeline. "Do not let him forget." Madeline nodded. "I will not." Caleb and Madeline left the clinic with Isaiah. The snow had slowed. The city moved beneath a pale night sky, traffic lights reflected in slush along the road. Inside the SUV, Madeline opened a folder Isaiah had collected from outside counsel. The garage access record showed Preston entering at 11:22. The wallet was reported missing at 11:51. Caleb entered the lobby at 12:04. The main camera file had been deleted at 2:06. Preston's office account had accessed the server at 2:01. Caleb read each page carefully. "He waited until after you followed me." Madeline looked up. "What?" "He did not delete the footage immediately. He waited." "Why?" "He needed to know what you believed." She thought of Preston's messages. "Need the drive. Run a background check. Handle the Turner situation." "He realized the wallet had been returned," Madeline said. "He needed another reason to make me afraid of you. So he changed the story from stolen money to stolen data." Isaiah looked at them in the mirror. That sounds like a man repairing a bad plan while it is still collapsing. Caleb studied the garage map. Where was the town car? Isaiah pointed. Near the west elevator, and the main camera mounted above the service exit. Caleb traced the angle with one finger. If Preston knew the system, he would know that camera could see him. Madeline looked at the map. He approved the installation. Then he either believed he could erase it, or he believed the camera did not matter. Isaiah turned into the underground garage beneath Ashford Tower. Outside counsel had arranged for a digital investigator to meet them in the private security office. The investigator was a woman named Lena Ortiz. She wore glasses, a black sweater, and the expression of someone who trusted machines more than executives. She did not stand when Madeline entered. Your system is a mess. Madeline removed her coat. Can you recover the footage? I recovered part of it. She turned a monitor toward them. The garage appeared in gray and blue. At 11:19, Caleb's truck entered the frame. At 11:22, the image jumped. At 11:27, Caleb appeared near the town car holding the wallet. The 5 missing minutes contained Preston's arrival. Lena tapped the screen. The original section was overwritten. The elevator archive has this. A second camera view appeared. It showed only the elevator doors and a narrow section of the garage. Preston stepped into the frame at 11:22. He wore the same dark coat from the charity dinner. In one hand was Madeline's wallet. Madeline felt her stomach tighten. Preston looked toward the empty security booth, then walked out of frame. 3 minutes later, Caleb appeared from the opposite direction. He was carrying his toolbox. He stopped near the town car, bent down, and picked up the wallet. The elevator camera did not show where Preston had placed it. Caleb watched the screen. Go back. Lena moved the footage backward. Stop. She froze the image as Preston crossed beside a black sedan parked near the wall. Caleb leaned closer. The car. What about it? Madeline asked. The side panel. The sedan had been polished recently. The garage lights reflected across its surface. Caleb pointed toward a faint distortion in the paint. You can see the other side of the lane. Lena enlarged the image. The picture broke into squares. She adjusted the contrast and advanced one frame at a time. A reflection appeared. Preston crouched beside Madeline's town car. Something small flashed in his hand. Lena sharpened the next frame. The silver drive. Madeline stepped closer. Preston removed it from the wallet and connected it to a device in his palm. A small light appeared. Then he returned the drive to the hidden sleeve and placed the wallet beside the tire. He stood and walked away. No accident. No security test. A decision. Caleb did not speak. Lena opened another window. The drive has a connection history stored in its control chip. It was accessed at 11:24 using an encrypted copying device. Can you identify the device? Madeline asked. Not yet. I can tell you it was not connected again until this afternoon when I examined it. She looked at Caleb. During the entire time the wallet was in your possession, the drive was never opened or copied. Caleb stared at the screen. His name had been damaged by a claim that could have been disproved before the police ever entered the diner. Madeline looked at Lena. Put that in writing. I already did. Can you open the files? They are encrypted, but Mr. Shaw's device left a temporary key in the system log. Lena inserted the drive into an isolated computer. Folders appeared. Community services, vendor contracts, pediatric assistance, private reserves, internal review. Madeline selected pediatric assistance. A spreadsheet opened. Hundreds of application numbers filled the screen. Some were marked incomplete. Others were marked delayed. A third group was labeled administrative hold. Caleb moved beside her. Search for Turner. Lena entered the name. One record appeared. Rosie Turner. Urgent respiratory medication. Requested amount $3,140. Status incomplete documentation. Caleb leaned closer. The clinic sent everything. Lena opened the file history. The application had been complete 11 days earlier. An executive account changed the status 3 hours after submission. Preston Shaw. Caleb's face went still. Madeline felt anger rise through her body, but beside it came something worse. Recognition. She had signed reports claiming the fund was healthy. She had repeated those reports at donor events. She had stood beneath bright lights and spoken about compassion while children waited behind altered records. "Open the payment folders," she said. Lena selected vendor contracts. Transfers appeared. Millions of dollars had moved from the Children First Fund into companies with names suggesting medical transport, family counseling, and neighborhood care. The companies had no employees. Their addresses led to mailboxes and rented office suites. Approval signatures appeared beneath each payment. Preston Shaw. Madeline opened another file. Internal emails filled the screen. Delay emergency requests until the next reporting period. Reclassify approved grants as pending review. Move available funds to special vendor reserve. Do not contact families until further notice. Caleb read the messages without blinking. How many? Lena scrolled through the spreadsheet. 312 delayed applications. How many? Urgent? 74. Caleb stepped away from the computer. The room seemed too small for the number. 74 children. 74 families opening letters, calling clinics, counting money at kitchen tables. Rosie had not been unlucky. She had been selected by a system built to make theft look like delay. Madeline closed her eyes. Keep copies off the company network. Lena nodded. Already done. The security office door opened. Preston stood in the entrance. His tie was loose. His usual calm remained, but only at the edges. Madeline, I have been trying to reach you. No one answered. His eyes moved toward the monitor. The footage showed his reflection beside the town car. He stopped breathing for a second. Then he smiled. That angle is misleading. Madeline turned toward him. You said you were not in the garage. I misunderstood the time you were asking about. You removed the drive for a security review. You copied it. I created a backup. You placed my wallet beneath the car. Preston spread his hands. We had concerns about executive vulnerability. I arranged a controlled test. With $40,000, you insisted on carrying the cash, with confidential evidence of your own theft. His expression changed. Only slightly. That is a serious accusation. Lena turned the monitor toward him. The payment records filled the screen. Preston's eyes moved across the names of the shell companies. He looked at Madeline. You do not understand the accounting structure. I understand 312 families were denied help while money left the fund. The money was moved temporarily. We're strategic reserves. Owned by you. Preston's jaw tightened. Caleb stepped closer. My daughter could not breathe temporarily. Preston looked at him for the first time. Contempt returned to his face, familiar and easy. You should not be here. Caleb remained still. You brought me here when you put the wallet where you knew a worker would find it. You think this makes you important? No. Caleb's voice was quiet. It makes your mistake visible. Preston reached into his coat. Isaiah moved between him and the computer. Preston removed his phone. I am calling legal. Use the company line, Madeline said. Do not be dramatic. Put the phone on the desk. Preston laughed once. You have allowed a stranger with a sick child to manipulate you. Madeline looked at Caleb. The worn jacket, the tired eyes, the man who had returned everything while her most trusted executive stole from children. Then she looked back at Preston. No, I am finally noticing who has been manipulating me. Preston's face hardened. He turned and walked out. Isaiah followed. Madeline reached for her phone. Lock the executive garage. The three of them moved quickly through the corridor. By the time they reached the elevators, Preston was already descending. Isaiah contacted building security. Close every vehicle gate. No one leaves without approval. The elevator doors opened into the garage. Preston was crossing toward a silver sedan with his phone pressed to his ear. His voice carried across the concrete. Destroy the duplicate files. Do it now. Madeline lifted her phone and started recording. Preston. He turned. The call ended. For the first time, fear showed openly in his face. He reached for the car door. The exit gate lowered with a heavy mechanical sound. 2 security officers approached from the elevator bank. Preston pointed at Madeline. She is acting under emotional distress. I am the chief financial officer. Open the gate. No one moved. A marked police vehicle entered through the opposite lane. The attorney had already delivered the recovered evidence to investigators. An officer stepped out. Preston looked toward the second exit. Caleb moved into the lane. He did not touch him. He did not raise his voice. He simply stood where Preston would have to pass. Move, Preston said. No, you are a maintenance worker. Caleb held his gaze. I am the man you expected no one to believe. The officer approached. Madeline handed over her phone. He just instructed someone to destroy duplicate files. Preston turned toward her. You are making a mistake. Madeline's voice remained calm. I made the mistake when I trusted you without looking. The officers took Preston's phone. They did not handcuff him immediately. They spoke to him, checked the vehicle, and contacted the Financial Crimes Unit. Preston continued explaining. Controlled test, temporary transfer, executive discretion, administrative delay. Each phrase sounded smaller than the one before it. Caleb watched without satisfaction. Madeline noticed. You should feel relieved, she said quietly. I will feel relieved when Rosie's medicine is no longer a decision on someone's spreadsheet. The emergency board meeting began at 8:30 the next morning. 12 directors sat around the walnut table on the 41st floor. Outside, sunlight spread across the frozen city. Inside, no one touched the coffee. Preston sat at the far end beside 2 attorneys. He had been released pending further investigation, but his access to company systems had been suspended. Caleb stood near the windows. He had refused a suit. He wore a clean white shirt beneath his old jacket. Madeline entered with Lena Isaiah, outside counsel, and a representative from the state attorney's office. Preston began before she sat down. This meeting is premature. The materials obtained last night have not been properly contextualized. Madeline placed the black wallet in the center of the table. The sound of leather touching wood silenced him. Before we discuss financial exposure, she said, we will discuss what this company did to Caleb Turner. One board member shifted uncomfortably. Preston leaned forward. He was found in possession of executive property. He returned it. He accessed confidential material. He did not. Madeline looked toward Lena. Play the footage. The lights dimmed. Preston appeared on the screen carrying the wallet. The reflection showed him removing the drive, connecting it to the copying device, returning it, and placing the wallet beside the tire. No one spoke. The footage changed. Caleb entered the frame. He found the wallet. He checked the identification. He waited near the empty booth. He carried it toward the elevator openly. Lena displayed the device history. No files were accessed while the wallet was in Mr. Turner's possession. A legal advisor lowered her eyes. Madeline continued. Company security received that information before the criminal complaint was complete. Mr. Shaw proceeded anyway. Preston shook his head. The footage does not explain the financial records. No, Madeline said. The financial records explain the footage. The spreadsheets appeared. Shell vendors. False contracts. Delayed medical applications. Transfers. Emails. Approval signatures. The room seemed to contract around the table. A board member whispered, how much? Lena answered. Current confirmed diversion is $11.8 million. The forensic review is ongoing. Another board member looked at Preston. You stole from the children's fund. Preston stood. I moved liquidity to protect broader company interests. Caleb looked at him. Did the children know they were protecting the company? Preston ignored him. Madeline opened Rosie's application. Her name appeared on the wall. An 8-year-old child was denied urgent respiratory medication after a complete application was intentionally changed to incomplete. She opened the next page. And she was not alone. Rows of names appeared. Madeline faced the board. Preston designed the theft, but he operated inside a system I was responsible for supervising. Several directors looked at her. She did not look away. I accepted summaries instead of asking who was waiting behind the numbers. I repeated claims I had not verified. I allowed one executive to turn suspicion into procedure and silence into control. Preston laughed bitterly. "You are sacrificing the company to protect your reputation." Madeline looked at him. "No, I am placing the truth above it." She announced his termination for cause. The company would cooperate with state and federal investigators. An independent forensic audit would begin immediately. Every delayed medical application would receive emergency review. Families harmed by false denials would be contacted. The company would fund legal and financial assistance for those who had taken on debt because promised support had been withheld. Caleb's public record would be corrected. The company would issue a statement acknowledging that he had returned the wallet intact and had been falsely accused. Rosie's identity would remain private. When Madeline finished, the boardroom was silent. She looked toward Caleb. "Would you like to say anything?" He walked to the end of the table. No one looked at his boots now. "My daughter will receive her medicine because you know her name," he said. His voice did not rise. "Most of the children in those files do not have anyone in this room who knows theirs." He looked at the application list on the screen. "Do not fix one story because it became embarrassing." His eyes moved around the table. "Fix the system that keeps creating them." No one applauded. The silence was more honest than applause. After the meeting, the directors left in small groups. Preston was escorted to a private interview with investigators. The wallet remained on the table. Caleb stood near the window looking down at the streets. Madeline approached. "You could have asked for anything." "I did." "What?" He looked at her. "For you to see all of them." Madeline glanced back at the names still glowing on the screen. "You make it difficult to remain the person I was." Caleb's expression softened. "That is not the same as knowing who you want to become." "No." She stepped closer, leaving only a careful distance between them. "But I would like to find out." He studied her face. There was no pity in it now, no suspicion. Only a woman standing without the armor she had worn into every room. "Start with the fund," he said. Madeline nodded. "I will." Caleb turned toward the door. Before he reached it, Madeline spoke again. "Rosie's medication was approved this morning." He stopped. "The clinic called yes." His shoulders lowered. For a moment he looked like a man who had forgotten how relief felt. Then he closed his eyes. When he opened them, Madeline was still there. He reached for her hand. Not as forgiveness, not as a promise. Only long enough to let her understand that for the first time he believed she was standing on the same side of the truth. Caleb held Madeline's hand for only a moment. Then he released it and looked through the boardroom windows at Chicago spread beneath them. The city had not changed. Traffic still moved between towers. Trains still curved through neighborhoods where families waited for letters, approvals, and decisions made by people they would never meet. Snow remained along the rooftops, clean from a distance and gray beside the streets. Madeline stood beside him without asking what the gesture meant. Caleb appreciated that. His phone vibrated inside his jacket. "The clinic." He answered immediately. "This is Caleb Turner." A woman from the pharmacy spoke quickly, as if she knew he had spent too long waiting for good news. Rosie's medication had been approved. The full first month was ready for pickup. The clinic had also arranged transportation because his truck was still unreliable. Caleb closed his eyes. "Can you say that again?" The woman repeated it. He thanked her twice. After the call ended, he remained still. Madeline watched him. "Is everything all right?" He nodded. For several seconds he could not speak. Then he said, "They have it." Madeline's shoulders lowered. "The medication." "Yes." Caleb looked down at his hands. He had fixed broken pipes with those hands, rebuilt frozen motors, held Rosie through nights when every breath sounded fragile, returned money that could have bought relief. Now there was nothing to repair, only relief itself. He pressed one hand over his mouth and turned slightly away. Madeline did not touch him. She stood close enough that he knew she was there, and far enough that the moment remained his. When Caleb finally looked at her, his eyes were wet. "Thank you." Madeline shook her head. "The money already belonged to those families. You still had to choose to return it." Her expression tightened. "I should have protected it before anyone stole it." Caleb looked toward the application name still glowing on the wall screen. "Then protect the next one." Madeline nodded. "I will." That afternoon, Rosie sat on the edge of a clinic bed while a nurse explained how to use the new medication. The inhaler was larger than the old one and came with a spacer marked in bright blue. Rosie examined it carefully. "It looks expensive." Caleb glanced at the nurse. The nurse smiled gently. "You do not need to worry about that." Rosie looked at Caleb. "That usually means it was very expensive." Caleb sat beside her. "It means the people who were supposed to help finally did their job." Rosie considered this. "Did the hotel lady make them?" Madeline stood near the doorway holding a paper bag from Ruthie's grill. "She reminded them," Caleb said. Rosie looked at Madeline. "Did you bring pancakes, turkey sandwiches?" Rosie's face fell. Madeline lifted a second bag. "And pancakes." Rosie smiled. "I knew you were learning." Caleb looked away to hide his own smile. The nurse handed him the medication schedule. For the first time in months, the page did not include a price he could not pay. Rosie took the first dose beneath the nurse's supervision. They waited. Her breathing remained calm. No tightness, no sudden cough, no fear moving across Caleb's face before he could hide it. Rosie looked at him. "You are doing the counting thing. I am observing. You counted 7 breaths. You noticed I counted you counting." Madeline set the food on the table. "Is this something you both do?" Rosie nodded. "He thinks I do not know." Caleb folded the medication instructions. "You are supposed to be eating. You are changing the subject. It is one of my best skills." Madeline sat in the chair across from them. The room was small. The overhead light buzzed softly. Snow pressed against the window. Nothing about the moment belonged in a company newsletter. There were no photographers, no public statement, no oversized check. Only a father watching his daughter breathe and a woman beginning to understand how much silence could hold. 3 days later, Ashford Hospitality released a statement clearing Caleb's name. The statement acknowledged that he had found Madeline's wallet, returned it with all money and materials intact, and had been falsely accused through actions taken by a former executive. It did not mention Rosie. It did not describe Caleb's apartment. It did not turn his hardship into a story designed to improve the company's image. Madeline approved every word herself. The video recorded inside Ruthie's grill had already spread online. The original post called Caleb a thief. A second post showed him leaving the station without charges. By the end of the week, the correction had been viewed more times than the accusation. Caleb did not read the comments. Ruth did. She stood behind the diner counter one morning, scrolling through her phone with a fierce expression. "Someone says you are an example of forgotten American virtue." Caleb tightened a pipe beneath the sink. "That sounds uncomfortable." "Another person wants to start a fundraiser." "No. I already told them no." He looked out from beneath the sink. "You responded. I may have written that dignity is not a fundraising opportunity. That sounds like you. I also corrected their grammar. That sounds more like you." Ruth put away the phone. "You know some people are trying to apologize. Some of them filmed Rosie." "Yes. That is not an apology I need." Ruth rested her hands on the counter. "What do you need?" Caleb returned to the pipe. "Time." Ruth watched him work. "You trust Madeline." He did not answer immediately. I trust what she did when the truth became expensive. That is not what I asked. It is the answer I have. Ruth smiled faintly. You are exhausting. I get that often. Across the city, Madeline sat at the head of a conference table with no cameras and no prepared speech. The Children First Fund emergency review had begun. Independent auditors occupied 3 floors of Ashford Tower. Every payment connected to Preston's office was being traced. Several accounts had been frozen. 2 employees had come forward with emails they had been afraid to report. Madeline listened to a pediatric social worker explain how families became trapped by missing documents, changing requirements, and unanswered calls. No one used the word temporary. No one called suffering an administrative delay. A mother named Denise Carter described waiting 17 days for help with her son's heart medication. Madeline did not interrupt. Denise placed a folder on the table. Every person I called told me someone else had the decision. Madeline opened the folder. There were 13 printed emails, 3 letters, 6 pages of notes written in blue ink. How is your son now? Madeline asked. He is stable. I am glad. Denise looked at her. That is not enough. Madeline nodded. No. The company created an emergency approval system with a fixed response time. Medical decisions would be reviewed by doctors and family advocates rather than finance executives. Fund transfers would require independent oversight. Every delayed case would be reopened. Families who had borrowed money because promised aid was withheld would receive legal and financial assistance. The changes were written into policy. Madeline signed them in a room without applause. 6 weeks passed. Winter loosened its hold on Chicago. Snow remained in the shaded corners of parking lots, but water ran along the curbs in silver lines. The days stretched later into the evening. Rosie returned to school full-time. Her teacher assigned the class a science project about structures. Rosie chose bridges. She covered the kitchen table with cardboard glue, string paint, and more confidence than engineering knowledge. Caleb stood beside her holding 2 pieces of wood. These supports cannot carry the deck. They are decorative. Decorative supports are still expected to support. My bridge has glitter. That changes the load. It makes it stronger, scientifically, emotionally. Caleb stared at her. Rosie smiled. You cannot prove it does not. He placed the wood on the table. Your mother would be proud of that argument. Madeline knocked on the apartment door. Rosie ran to open it. Madeline stood on the landing carrying a paper bag and a rolled set of building plans. You brought work, Rosie said. And cookies. You may come in. Caleb looked up from the table. You are teaching her bad standards. She has excellent standards. Rosie took the cookies and disappeared into the kitchen. Madeline removed her coat. The apartment looked different from the night she had watched through the window. Not larger, not newer. But the leaking frame had been repaired. The portable heater was gone. The yellow notice had been removed from the door. The rent problem had been resolved through a tenant assistance program created for every qualifying household in the building. Caleb had accepted only after confirming that the program did not use his name. Madeline placed the building plans on the table. The outside engineering firm reviewed your report. Caleb wiped glue from his fingers, and they want to know how 3 previous inspections missed foundation movement in the west building. They inspected from the hallway. You entered the crawl space. That is where the foundation was. Madeline looked at him. They would like you to lead the full structural review. Caleb unfolded the plans. The first consultation had been intended as temporary work. He had examined 6 apartment buildings owned by an Ashford subsidiary. In 4 days, he found damaged support columns, unsafe electrical modifications, blocked fire exits, and repairs that had existed only on invoices. His report was direct. He named the failures. He included photographs. He refused to soften the language for executives. Madeline had read every page twice. There is another document, she said. She placed an envelope beside the plans. Caleb looked at it. What is this, a job offer? His expression closed slightly. Madeline noticed. It was reviewed by outside counsel and approved by the board committee. You would report to the head of community development, not to me. Caleb opened the envelope. Director of Community Project Safety. The salary was more than he had earned in any year since Anna's death. The company would cover the training and fees required to renew his professional license. His responsibilities included building inspections, safety planning, contractor review, and community consultation. He read the page slowly. Rosie entered with a cookie in each hand. Is it good? Caleb looked at her. It is complicated. That means yes. Madeline sat across from him. This is not a ceremonial position. I know. You found problems 3 consulting firms missed. I know. You would be expected to disagree with executives. I am qualified. I know. He looked at her. A smile moved at the corner of her mouth. Caleb returned to the letter. You thought through the conflict. I had help. You included independent review. Yes. No press release. No press release. No story about the honest man from the garage. Never. Rosie sat beside him. Does the job build bridges? Not exactly. Then ask for bridges. Caleb looked at the plans spread across the table. The apartment buildings needed more than repairs. They needed ramps, safe walkways, new community rooms, and better connections to transit. Maybe later, he said. Rosie nodded. Put it in writing. Madeline laughed. Caleb signed the letter. His hand remained over the page for a moment. I will earn it. Madeline's expression softened. That is why it was offered. The work changed Caleb's days. He stopped carrying a toolbox from diner to diner and began carrying rolled plans into buildings that had been ignored for years. He listened to tenants before speaking with contractors. He entered basements in old boots. He checked fire doors himself. He asked children where water leaked during storms because children often noticed what adults had learned to accept. When a project manager called one repair unnecessary, Caleb brought him to the apartment of a woman who slept beside a wall cracked from floor to ceiling. Tell her, Caleb said. The manager looked at the crack. He approved the repair. Madeline did not protect Caleb from disagreement. She protected his right to be heard. At company meetings, he challenged her openly. You cannot close the community room for 6 months. The repair schedule requires it. Then phase the construction. It costs more. So does moving 70 families into temporary spaces. Madeline looked around the table. Phase the construction. Afterward, Caleb caught up with her in the hallway. You agreed quickly. You were right. You enjoy saying that now. I am becoming efficient. He smiled. Their relationship grew in ordinary spaces. Coffee beside construction plans. Quiet drives after clinic appointments. Conversations in Ruthie's grill after Rosie fell asleep in a booth. Madeline learned that Caleb hated Olive's distrusted decorative pillows and always carried 2 pencils because Anna used to lose one. Caleb learned that Madeline read mystery novels on sleepless nights, loved old jazz records, and had never learned to cook anything beyond toast. One Saturday, she tried to make pancakes in Caleb's kitchen. The first one burned. The second folded in the middle. The third landed partly on the stove. Rosie watched with deep concern. Did you follow the directions? Yes. Caleb examined the bowl. You used salt. Madeline looked at the container. It was white. So is flour. Rosie took the spoon from her. You run hotels? Several. Do they serve breakfast usually? Do not tell them about this. Caleb laughed. The sound surprised him. It came easily. For a second, guilt followed it. Anna had loved Saturday mornings. She used to dance in the kitchen while coffee brewed, pulling Caleb into clumsy steps between the table and the stove. Madeline noticed his expression change. She did not ask in front of Rosie. That evening after Rosie went to sleep, Caleb walked Madeline to the stairs. I am sorry, he said. For the pancakes. For disappearing. You were standing beside the sink. You know what I mean. Madeline looked toward the quiet apartment. You do not have to apologize for remembering her. Caleb leaned against the doorframe. Sometimes laughing feels like leaving something behind. Madeline did not offer comfort too quickly. Would you take me somewhere tomorrow? He looked at her. Wherever you go when you miss her. The next afternoon, Caleb drove them to the lakefront. The sky was pale and clear. Wind moved hard across the water. They followed a path toward a wooden bench beneath a bare tree. A small plaque carried Anna Turner's name. Caleb brushed snow from the seat. Madeline sat beside him. For several minutes they watched waves break against the concrete shore. She hated winter, Caleb said. Madeline looked at the water. Then this is a questionable location. She loved the lake more. He placed both hands inside his coat pockets. Anna could enter a room full of people and make each person feel like she had been waiting for them. She sounds remarkable. She was. Madeline waited. Caleb looked toward the horizon. After she died, everyone wanted me to move forward. I dislike that phrase. So did I. It sounds like grief is standing in the way. He glanced at her. That is exactly what it felt like. Madeline drew a breath. I am not threatened by someone you loved well. Caleb's eyes remained on her. She continued. I am not asking you to leave her behind. The wind moved a strand of hair across Madeline's face. Caleb reached out and tucked it gently behind her ear. The touch lasted only a second. Madeline did not lean closer. She let him decide the distance. I do not know what I am ready for, he said. You do not have to know today. I have a daughter. I know. She has already lost someone. I know. I cannot bring people into her life carelessly. Madeline looked toward Anna's name on the plaque. You should not. Caleb studied her face. There was no impatience in it, no demand for a promise, only honesty. He looked back toward the lake. They sat until the cold forced them to stand. 2 weeks later, the first repaired apartment building reopened its community center. The project included a new heating system, safe electrical wiring, accessible entrances, and a small indoor play area. No stage had been built for executives. There were folding chairs, paper cups, and children running between tables. Madeline attended without a press team. She sat near the back while residents spoke. A father described finally being able to carry his son's wheelchair through the front entrance. An older woman thanked the workers who had repaired her ceiling. A teenager asked whether the company would create paid training for neighborhood students. Madeline wrote the question in her notebook. Caleb stood near the wall talking to a contractor. He watched her listen. She did not reach for a microphone. She did not explain the company's generosity. She did not turn toward him to make sure he noticed. That was the moment something inside Caleb settled. After the meeting, Rosie went home with Ruth. Madeline and Caleb walked through the neighborhood toward the diner. The evening was warmer than it had been in months. Water dripped from rooftops. The sidewalks smelled of wet pavement and spring. At the entrance to Ruthie's Grill, Caleb stopped. This is not a meeting. Madeline looked at him. Good. It is not about the fund. Better. It is not gratitude. Her eyes softened. Caleb. And I am paying. She raised an eyebrow. You are aware I own several hotels. None of them make Ruth's pie. That is a strong argument. He opened the door. Ruth looked up from behind the counter and smiled too quickly. Caleb pointed at her. Do not. I said nothing. You were about to. I was about to offer menus. You have never offered me a menu. You have never arrived with the chief executive officer of a hotel company. Madeline removed her coat. Tonight I am only hungry. Ruth handed them menus. Then you are in the right place. They sat in a booth near the window. No crisis waited between them. No police report. No medical bill. No hidden drive. At first, the absence of emergency made them both uncertain. Then Madeline asked about Caleb's engineering license exam. He asked why she owned 4 identical black coats. She denied they were identical. He described each one. She accused him of conducting an unauthorized inventory. They ate pie. They argued about music. Madeline admitted she disliked country songs. Caleb called it a character flaw. She said his truck radio played only static. He said the static had emotional range. When the diner began closing, neither seemed ready to leave. Outside, the air had turned cold again. They stood beneath the awning while Ruth locked the front door. Rosie appeared inside the glass with her coat on and a paper star in her hand. Ruth opened the door. This child refused to go home until she delivered something. Rosie walked to Madeline. "This is for your wallet." The star was made from silver paper with a blue center. Madeline accepted it carefully. "So I do not lose it again." Rosie nodded. "You lose important things." Caleb looked at Madeline. "She has evidence." Madeline opened the black wallet. The $40,000 was gone. The silver drive remained with investigators. Inside were her identification cards, a receipt from the clinic cafeteria, and the blue paper star Rosie had made for Anna. Madeline placed the new star beside it. Rosie looked satisfied. Ruth took her hand. "Come on. Your father is pretending this is not a date." Rosie looked at Caleb. "It is a date. Go with Ruth. That means yes." The door closed behind them. Caleb and Madeline remained beneath the awning. A light snow began to fall. The flakes melted against the sidewalk. Madeline looked at the wallet in her hand. "The night I followed you, I thought I was looking for proof that you had lied." Caleb rested his hands inside his coat pockets. "You were very committed to the theory." "I was." "What did you find?" Madeline looked at him. "A man who made me want to stop living as though everyone was a threat." Caleb stepped closer. "That sounds dangerous. I have been told I need more of that." He smiled. The distance between them disappeared slowly. Madeline waited. Caleb touched her cheek with one hand. Then he kissed her. It was quiet and careful. No rush, no promise spoken too soon. When they separated, Madeline kept her forehead near his. Caleb looked through the diner window. Rosie and Ruth were pretending not to watch. "They are watching us," he said. "They are very bad at it." Rosie lifted both hands in celebration. Caleb laughed. Months later, spring covered Chicago in green. Caleb stood beside a newly completed pedestrian bridge connecting the repaired community center to a public park. Children waited behind a ribbon with bicycles, scooters, and painted signs. Rosie held the ceremonial scissors. Her cardboard bridge model had won second place at school. She still believed glitter had improved the structure. Madeline stood beside Caleb without cameras from the company office. She wore no executive badge, only a blue coat and the silver paper star tucked inside her wallet. Rosie cut the ribbon. The children ran across the bridge. Caleb watched the structure respond beneath their footsteps. Stable, balanced, built to carry more than its own weight. Madeline slipped her hand into his. On the other side of the bridge, Rosie turned and waved. Caleb looked at Madeline, then together they followed her across.